Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. I'm Carleen Johnson, the Center Square's Washington state government correspondent. And today was the day that we've been waiting for. Well, some people not as excited about it, but others anticipating the introduction of legislation for an income tax in the state of Washington, something that voters here have rejected many times on the ballot, something that the state Supreme Court has ruled unconstitutional going back to, I think, close to 90 years ago. But here we go again, another run at this in the form of what was introduced today, which was Senate Bill 6346. Now, proponents say it's not an income tax. It's couched as a millionaire's tax because it would only apply to those with an income above $1 million. What they slipped into the bill and what created a lot of questions today, as this was rolled out this morning by majority Democrats, was the fact that this will apply to a married couple with a combined income of $1 million or more. So your husband makes $500,000, you make $500,000, and boom, this tax now applies to you, and it's 9.9% of your income, projected to raise anywhere from $3 to $5 billion a year in the state of Washington to fund a whole host of programs, K through 12 education, public safety, helping people with insurance that can't pay for it, all sorts of things. The flip side of that is that it also could trickle down. And that was a lot of the questions that we at the Center Square raised to majority Democrats today, saying, well, what's to say that this, for now, millionaires tax won't in the very near future be expanded to apply to lower income earners in the state of Washington? Because in fact, Representative Larry Springer, who is himself a Democrat, has said publicly many times, now he hasn't said whether or not he's going to ultimately support this, but he said many times that Washingtonians should not believe majority Democrats that this will remain an income tax only on millionaires. So I got an opportunity in today's media availability with majority Democrats to pose that question and to say, wait a minute, the guy from your own party says this thing is going to trickle down well below millionaires and apply to others. So I got a response from Representative Joe Fitzgibbon as I posed that question in the media avail today. So watch this.
There's not support in the legislature for enacting an income tax on low-income people. There's not support in the public for that. That's
not necessarily low income. What about moderate income? Somebody who makes $900,000.
Rep. Springer has, made his comments on that. I think what you're hearing from us is that we're not pursuing that, and we don't hear support for that from our constituents.
And you won't in the future.
We don't hear support for that in our colleagues or our constituents.
But I'm still not getting a clear answer.
Look, we're not going to bind future legislatures, but that's not a proposal that we support.
So as you see, I didn't really get a response to my question. He was referencing the fact that majority Democrats would never support an income tax on low income people in Washington. Well, that wasn't the question, right? The question was, okay, what about the guy who makes $500,000, $600,000, $700,000? So I took note of the fact that I didn't really get a response there. Maybe left himself a little bit of wiggle room for the future. They certainly tried to deflect and say that, we can't say how future legislative members would vote on such a thing. So they definitely kind of danced around that one a little bit. Governor Bob Ferguson held a very last minute press conference at 12:30 today to come out and say, I should back up a little bit. He first issued a statement earlier in the day that said, okay, this is a good start, but this is not going to fly. His concern is that there are not enough carve-outs to put some of the money back into the pockets of Washingtonians and small business owners. He said from the beginning he would only support a millionaire's tax, and I will call it an income tax because it is an income tax, even if for now it's only on millionaires. It's an income tax. He said he would only support that if a good chunk of the profits from that, the $3 to $5 billion a year, would go back to offset and make the tax system more fair. Because that's what they say at this point, that it's, our tax system is regressive in the state of Washington. The lowest wage earners pay the highest share of the tax burden in the state. Depends on how you play the numbers there, right? Because if a millionaire is paying, 10% of their taxes, that's a whole lot bigger chunk of money than, somebody that only makes $40,000 in the state of Washington. So that's the argument that we're going to see played out in the weeks to come. But I'm waiting to see this comment from Governor Bob Ferguson, who was raising some concerns and some of his objections to Democrats in the way this initial proposal looks today.
The Working Families Tax Credit is an important program, but the eligibility is too narrow right now. Too many working families don't qualify, and we need to improve that. We need to expand the eligibility for more working families so they qualify, and we need to expand that significantly. I'll have more to say about this in the coming days as well. Additionally, another area I've emphasized is our small business owners also need tax relief. Small businesses power our economy, create jobs, and are key to our communities. I propose devoting $1 billion in tax relief to our small business owners. I understand the Senate proposal is smaller, devotes about $104 million in tax relief. So we have some negotiating to do, and I understand that.
And even before today, we saw the income tax rollout from majority Democrats. And hours before, we saw Governor Bob Ferguson come out and say, I support it, but we've got some work to do before he'd be willing to sign it into law. There was a discussion from minority members, the Republican leadership, who started right off with the media veil at 9:00 this morning to say, this thing is a non-starter for us. Here's some comments as the media veil opened from Senate Minority Leader John Braun.
The Democratic majority unveiled their much talked about income tax proposal last night. Disappointed to see that. I think that goes absolutely in the wrong direction on affordability. I know they'll hail it as a high earners tax, but as I read it, this is a tax that starts with a certain group, prioritizes pass-through entities, so very much, in my view, an attack on small and medium-sized businesses that are going to damage our economy and ultimately set the stage for driving up affordability for everyone.
And again, the concerns raised by Republicans were the same questions that we at the Center Square asked, and other reporters stepped up and asked today of the governor and of the majority leadership to say, why should we believe this is going to remain on millionaires? And then also there's the whole, capital flight thing we've seen with the capital gains income tax, the capital flight that's happened. And with the taxes on business in the city of Seattle, you've had a lot of them move just across the lake to Bellevue and Redmond and Kirkland to avoid some of Seattle's, business taxes. So the thinking here is that as this thing moves forward in the weeks to come, and the first public hearing, I should say, is Friday at 1:30 in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And this is Senator Peterson's version of the bill. The House version from Fitzgibbon is likely not going to be the vehicle that moves forward, I was told. So the focus will be on the Senate version at this point. We're going to see these arguments played out in these public hearings. And I already know from emails that I've been getting today from members of the business community, whether it's the Washington Association of Business, all kinds of business interest groups, including the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce, Seattle Chamber of Commerce. None of them came out specifically right after this bill dropped to say, desist, we're going to completely oppose this with everything we've got, although we certainly suspect that the business community is not going to support this. The job creators aren't going to support this. They came out and said, we've got major concerns. We look forward to working with the bill sponsor and interested stakeholders in the weeks to come. And I should note, too, because this week is an important cutoff date. In fact, tomorrow is the cutoff here in the legislative session, which is the short session, only 60 days. And what that means is if a bill has not gotten a vote out of its committee of origin, whether it's an education committee, a ways and means committee, a housing committee, if it hasn't gotten a vote out of that committee, it's essentially dead for the session. Now, things can always get resurrected by the majority party if they choose on the Senate floor or the House floor, even if it never got a vote out of committee. And that has happened in prior sessions. But this bill, since it's gone directly to Ways and Means, and it has an obviously large fiscal impact on the state budget, they're not under the rules, the cutoff rules, for that February 4th date. So that's why the public hearing won't even be happening. The first public hearing won't even be happening until Friday. So that's the biggest deal that happened in Olympia today. It's going to be a gigantic fight. There's no question of that. I'll be sitting in those public hearings. The first one, as I mentioned, this Friday at 1:30. There's opportunities for folks on both sides of this argument to weigh in on the legislation and, let lawmakers know how they feel, because this one's going to get a giant bit of attention for these final weeks of the session. It's going to dominate the discussion. There's no question of that. Also wanted to talk about another bill that is likely moving forward in this session that's gotten a lot of attention, especially on social media, and that is Senate Bill 5974. This is the bill that would allow a state board to decertify an elected sheriff in the state of Washington. Right now, we only have one appointed sheriff, and that's in King County. Outside of that, the other 38 of the 39 counties in the state of Washington elect their sheriffs. And you have in Pierce County, very outspoken sheriff by the name of Keith Swank. And when he came down and testified in opposition to Senate Bill 5974, I think it was the first week of the session, it was fiery. He was intentionally fiery, he told me in that hearing, basically to say, you pass this bill, the people that elected me and support me will come and surround the city county building where I have my offices and, just try to remove me from office. Here's a little bit of that interview.
I'm fighting for the office of sheriff, the independence of it. The Democrats control the state House, the state Senate. They control every statewide executive office. They control just about every major city in the state. The only thing they don't control, the only people they don't control are the sheriffs. And when they have control of the sheriffs, then it's all over. They can impose their will upon everything. Gun confiscation, you won't be able to, they'll have those, what was it called? The Truth and Justice Commission, or all of that stuff. They will put you, it's like 1984. They'll put you in jail for your speech. And they want to do that. And I went down there, and yes, I said some strong words and I was provocative. My only regret is I only had 90 seconds instead of 3 minutes, because my speech was 3 minutes long and I could have really told him a few more things. So I had to hit the high points that I thought were the high points. But I'm in it to fight for the independence of the office of sheriff.
So he's not backing down. Obviously, the sheriff is very concerned about the ramifications of this bill passing. Don't know if it's going to end up, making it to the floor. And if it does, what this ultimately means certainly would be a lot of fallout. I also got some comments on this bill from Senator Mark Schessler of Ritzville. He'd posted to social media earlier this week his serious concerns with this bill. And he thinks it's a lot wider consequence and fallout than just decertifying an elected sheriff. So here's what Senator Schessler told me.
Our sheriffs are a constitutional office. They're elected by the people of 38 of the 39 counties, and they are at the grassroots. They uphold the laws. They swore to protect the Constitution, state and federal. Leave them alone.
One of the other big topics and themes of this session, whether or not there's going to be any bills that come out of it, but one of them has been some concerns, which I've written on extensively, and other reporters with the Center Square and also some other, influencers on social media have exposed quite a bit about, is the self-dealing, the appearance of self-dealing that's been going on with some of our non-governmental organizations, NGOs, that receive large taxpayer subsidies and then use those for race-based programs here in the state of Washington. Some of it, whether it's a down payment assistance on your home. It's to start a business. It's maybe education, that sort of a thing. There's been a lot of talk about that. If you've watched any of our Washington in Focus podcasts in recent months, you know that the Tacoma Urban League is under investigation. Seattle Urban League is under investigation, so far as even getting the attention of the Department of Justice in the Trump administration. Some folks have been placed on leave. So there have been a couple of bills offered up by Republicans this session to look into some of that alleged self-dealing, as well as the stories that we've written extensively on and what appears to be potential fraud in home-based daycares in the state of Washington. I've reported on that extensively as well. So here come these bills to basically say, we want some transparency. We want some accountability. We want to make sure that if you're getting funds from one race-based program or whatever it is, you can't get another one, right? So that would open up the pool of folks that are applying for these grants, taxpayer-funded grants, to have a chance at them, instead of it being down to a smaller pool of folks that are able to, in some cases, double, triple, quadruple dip into these taxpayer funds. So that's what those two bills have looked to correct, if you will. They did get a hearing in House Housing Committee last week that I sat in on. I'm sorry, it was actually a Senate Housing Committee that I sat in on. It doesn't look like at this point either of those bills might be advancing out of committee ahead of tomorrow's cutoff time. Thus came a House Joint Memorial, which is kind of like a bill offered by Representative Jenny Graham of Spokane Valley. And she's asking the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, to immediately get involved and investigate what state lawmakers, state agency officials, including our own state auditor, have said they have no intention of investigating. And majority Democrats have basically dismissed it all, saying, I think I was even called a right-wing influencer, which I'd never been called before, but asking the administration to get involved and really find out what's going on here. Because if it is the kind of self-dealing, it is the kind of fraud that we've seen exposed in Minnesota, we're talking potentially not just maybe even tens of millions of dollars, but hundreds of millions of dollars at a time when we're raising taxes again in the state of Washington. So here's a little bit of my interview with State Representative Jenny Graham about her House Joint Memorial, which I'm told will not get a public hearing.
You know, I've been watching to see how things unfold with the fraud situation that we're seeing, obviously nationwide. And I've been watching to see any examples that we might have here in Washington state. I knew that I had concerns regarding the homeless industrial complex, which is why I had dropped an additional bill to audit them, because truly we really don't have very good mechanisms set up to track when money is not being spent properly. And let's face it, there's nothing that happens when money disappears. Who actually is held accountable for it? So this truly, it goes all the way up to Governor Ferguson and A.G. Brown, which is where this joint memorial is coming from. They both have the ability to say, you know what, there's some credible allegations about possible fraud going on, and it's honestly their job to look to see if there is, large-scale fraud that's going on, because that is one of the reasons that your tax bills keep going up.
I was pleased that Representative Jenny Graham called out some of the investigative work that we've done at the Center Square and in her House Joint Memorial to the Department of Justice and the Trump administration. Gave us credit at the Center Square for some of our reporting on the potential fraud, and pointing out the fact that we've tried and repeatedly to get Attorney General Nick Brown or Auditor Pat McCarthy to get involved and investigate and really pay attention to this potential fraud. And we've been turned down basically and told, go away, stop knocking on daycare doors. You're not a real journalist. So it's been very dismissive, and Rep. Graham, I appreciated that she has taken note of that and asked for some real transparency and accountability, because if there is no fraud, great. the Washington taxpayers deserve to see that too, so they can trust these programs that year after year their tax dollars are going to. And if there is fraud there, then, let's expose it and let's hold some people accountable, potentially even criminally accountable for the wrongdoing and the potential self-dealing that's there. So that's some of the big stuff going on today. So I appreciate your time and attention to all these things. We're going to stay on top of it. We're at week 4 of the legislative session. So we've got a ways to go yet, but we're not going anywhere. We're going to stay on top of it. So thank you for watching Washington in Focus Daily. I'm Carleen Johnson with the Center Square, our state government correspondent. Have a great day.